Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Cannabis Pros and Marketing Masters podcast with the Beard Bros Network. I'm your host, Nigel Despinasse, and today we're coming with you with Andrew Ward. I honestly don't have enough words to describe Andrew and like a bevy of experience when it comes to words, cannabis, and writing in general. The dude has worked in entertainment, dance, nightlife, horror. He's written about wrestling. He's talked about music, finance, business, entertain, like pretty much anything that you can think of. This man's covered it in words and has had like a very laser beams focus on cannabis over the last couple of years, and has pretty much anything that you can think of in terms of companies or media outlets, he's written in it. So Andrew, it's good to have you on, dude. Give the listeners kind of like a quick intro about you.
Yeah, Nigel, thanks so much for the kind words and having me on. I hope I reach that bar that he just built up there. I don't know if I will, but I will try my best. Yeah, my name is Andrew Ward. I am up until recently, was a freelance journalist in the cannabis space, but also doubling on the copywriting marketing side. About almost 8 years ago now at this point, I got into the cannabis space after working in startups. Previous to that, I had also written for AOL for a year or so, working for some of their projects where I actually got to do some first-time cannabis reporting. And like Nigel said, before that, I worked at an electronic dance music site that I got off of Craigslist that was dodgy as all hell, but basically got me my only chance to get back into journalism after being told my writing degree would never mean anything after graduating in the 2008 recession. So yeah, basically the whole career is predicated on taking gambles and seeing what happens. And yeah, to that point, I recently left cannabis journalism to focus full-time more on the content marketing, SEO side. And yeah, it's been a fun endeavor. I now run a company called Award Creative Content, basically an extension of what I've been doing over the last 7 years. So check it out at awardcc.com.
Absolutely. And we kind of talked about it beforehand in backstage, but something that I really admire about the approach that you're taking in this, Andrew, is that Award is kind of this like Cerberus type of situation where you have like a two-headed dog that focuses on, cannabis and not cannabis, I guess to say, where like, I think a lot of issues that people who are career cannabis people tend to find is that we're almost feel pigeonholed in the subject matter that we engage in. I mean, for the last 8 years, I've been working in cannabis, and like, I can imagine trying to have the conversations like for hiring or anything else like that outside of the industry, because people just see a giant pot leaf whenever I'm speaking. So like, I think, and you have like a whole backlog of work and experience and contacts that you've worked with outside of it. So, I like that you just were like, yo, I'm here and like I'm ready to fucking swing and write the most badass copy that you can get.
That's the effort, man. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, to that point, I would say for my own sake, it was a bit by design. I've always kind of fancied myself a generalist. One of my favorite life lessons or quotes that I've lived by is learn something about everything and everything about something. And I've yet to learn everything about anything. I would say cannabis is probably close. There's probably, maybe 1990s WWF might be something. I don't know how that could translate to a career, but those are probably the two closest I have to everything, I would say, and still far from it. And I just like learning and pursuing. And the reason why I got into writing was because of that. I like storytelling and I like explaining things and I like breaking stuff down. And I got into I was thankfully at the right age, right career when the internet was taking off and content marketing was there, right around the time of clickbait, but not fully in the clickbait era. So,
right.
I got to cast a wide net. And, even in the weed world, though, to your point about being pigeonholed, I think professionals like in your space and others, I could totally relate to them. I don't want to speak that they shouldn't feel pigeonholed, but when it comes to content creating and journalism and stuff to that point, I don't know. I'm going to probably sound a little rude to it. I hope I don't come across that way, but it's more so that, I think it's self-imposed. It's pigeonholed. A lot of times it's not, again, by design. I think it's, unintentional, or you just kind of follow a path that feels like the best route to go down. And I completely understand. I've definitely done that at points in my career, especially on the news side, but you can break away from it. The elephant in the room on the journalism content creating side is these publication jobs don't pay enough. So basically every journalist should be doing side hustles, whether you want to or not. Like if you want to sustain an income, you kind of have to do that. I know very few, if any, writers that are even considered in the top tier of cannabis journalism that aren't doing some side work because of that. So you can double down and work more on cannabis. I've definitely done that too. But I think you need to look at the grand scheme of where you want to be. And just like I think, pro athletes are probably the best example of this, musician, artists, like you do need to dive full tilt into what you want to do. If you half-ass it, you're probably not going to succeed. So I fully understand why people want to go full tilt into cannabis, but you also need to be pragmatic and look at your bills. Are you making enough money to live? Are you sustaining? And, I don't think that's giving up your passion for the plant or your interest in the plant or anything like that. It's you surviving so you can continue to cover this sort of stuff. So for me, that was kind of always it. With journalism, no digital outlet, cannabis or otherwise, pays really well at this point. So absolutely. I said, screw it. Let's cast a wide net. Instead of writing 15 articles a month on cannabis, let's do 4 or 5 that I'm really interested in, or my audience is. And then I'm going to write about horror stuff for Dread Central, or I'm going to go cover some wrestling news for Wrestling Inc. Or, now I'm doing blogs for myself and working on keywords and covering stories that I want to write about, So, long story short, I think, to get where you're at, I think like the pigeonholing is definitely real for people like yourself and, in different areas of the sector. It could be a lot more authentic, but I think within cannabis content creation, you can always fix that. And, it's harder the longer you go in without fixing that, but it's definitely fixable.
And I totally agree. If I'm like being super honest and transparent from a writing perspective, I've 100% self-imposed cannabis as the only lane that I write in. And like you said, it is something that I balance out by having other means to make money. Because if I was only writing, then I 110% would have to go into my other interests and write about those things to supplement my income. Because like you said, nowhere in general pays well. I guess like maybe like Vogue or something, but like I'm not writing for them,
Yeah, dude. The pickings are slim, that's for sure. And you got to pick which option is, and it's always a gamble no matter which way you do it. So you just kind of have to have a plan and hope that it works out well for yourself. But yeah, I think either you got to diversify and choose your route. And for me, that was definitely the route. And for others, if you're going into it full tilt, just like you said, make sure you got a plan to find ways to do it, because writing itself in the digital media world is not doing it at the point, and it's sad because that's the state of digital media. It's not just cannabis, but it does affect the quality of the journalism out there. I think, full disclosure, I think the quality of cannabis media has definitely dipped in the last few years. It's one of the reasons why I got out of it, is because I just felt there was no real way to fix it. And you kind of end up, you slide down the slope if you want to make any money. Or honestly, there's some independent journalists that are doing some good work, but then there's also some that are just content creating and, just throwing bullcrap on the wall. So, it's like the state of it is just not that great. So I don't know. I feel like diversifying and finding different avenues, it probably is just the best move all around right now, because the state of digital media, it's not going to get fixed anytime soon unless we like blow up the whole SEO model, which is now being adapted in AI. So it's only just going to get further entrenched.
Preach. No, I think that's the biggest thing, is that content has become a volume game, which like you can see it from a bunch of people who make content. It's like one of those things where it's like, if you make 1,000 videos, one of them's likely to pop off. And it's like, we don't focus around what amount of quality exists within that volume. And so what ends up happening is that you have a tidal wave of shit that comes out, and people have to weed through it, excuse the pun, to like get to something that's valuable. You know what I mean? So like it sucks, because that inherently lowers the quality of work that exists, which makes people who really like put their heart and time into these things, like it devalues their efforts. And the other part of it being like, with what you were saying around generalism, I think the burden and gift of being a writer is that your job is to educate yourself in public for people. You know what I mean? Which is like something that I think is like not celebrated enough at all in any way, because the idea that you get put onto a story, or you find a story and you cover it, and you have to deconstruct something and put it back together for an audience, is like you opening yourself up in a way to the world, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. And, you know, I think to that point too, you add an extra layer of challenge to it too, though, is because you need to be educating yourself in real, if you're not an expert already on the beat, you are basically educating yourself on it, but you have to make sure it's correct and you have to make sure it's right, because once you go out there and it's wrong, especially in today's media, you're considered fake news. You're considered a fraud. You're considered a blah, blah, blah. And, you know, sometimes it's true. There's definitely some bad journalism going on there. And then sometimes there's just genuine mistakes, but the conflation of the two has definitely made it, you know, a fine line to walk, because you are educating yourself sometimes and learning and presenting it almost like, you know, a elevated book report. It's essentially like it is. But, you know, mistakes can happen. And nowadays, I think mistakes, you know, I don't know, it's weird. Like the people that make genuine mistakes almost seem to get written off, whereas the people that are the mistakes are more like blatant ripoffs of AI or misquoting on purpose and stuff like that. And I've seen people get free passes on that. And, you know, so it's kind of interesting to see that, you know, what does and what doesn't happen. And, you know, again, so kudos to anyone who goes into journalism, because the job doesn't pay well and you're educating yourself on the fly. And, you know, you used to have solid editors, but nowadays a lot of times editors are just green lighting stuff or just minimally editing stuff. So the quality is just, like it said, it goes back into the quality versus quantity of it. It's all just kind of this really weird, ugly churn of like, it's basically a shitstorm is what I'm trying to say.
It is. That is what it is. It like
now I'm going to go smoke some weed while we take this next point because of that.
I mean, that's the only way to de-stress from it all, right?
Yeah. You know, I mean, I don't know. I've been really on a kick lately of like, if I'm going to think the worst case scenario, I also look at the best case scenario just to like help keep my balance in my brain. And, you know, I feel like the last few months have definitely been a challenge of that in and out of the industry. So it's like, you know, I think the challenges of the industry I've kind of now seen as like, it's life and death for obviously a lot of operators and people wanting to do it. So you can't minimize and say it's not that important, but also at the same time, in the grand scheme of things, aside from getting people out of jail and keeping people's roofs over their heads, like, there are bigger things to have worst case scenarios on. So the state of cannabis media right now, I'm really disappointed with it. I'm disappointed with the state of digital media and, you know, media in general and media literacy and all that sort of stuff. But I don't know, I can't control it. So all I'm doing is trying to make my best and put my best out there. And I think there's a lot of people that are doing that, and you hope that it will get better one day. And I don't know. I don't think it will. I think the SEO like whole model is going to have to tank out before we like really change up on anything. But
well, and then that becomes a whole thing where you have to go all the way to the top to change how Google operates, because you have a monopoly inherently of how search even works, you know?
Well, that's what I'm excited about AI. You know, people are afraid of AI. And I mean, there's definitely fear of, you know, finding like barely sourced, you know, barely credible like information on AI potentially. But there's also a lot of time where AI is basically just tapping into SEO and using that to now summarize it. And I think that's going to put Google on their heels. You know, one of the things that I've been really following the last few months is some of the SEO updates. And I don't know how much you're in on the SEO side of things, but I guess like, you know, with the Google algorithm updates, you know, like regularly Google will put these out. Right before the new year, they hit 2 updates. One was for spam and then one was for user experience. So they're kind of now trying to shift away, I think, from the quality or from the quantity and kind of focus more back on quality user experience, because it almost seems like there's the pendulum with Google SEO. Like back in the day, you used to search for anything and it would be a random junk website would show up as the top result because they
just keyword stuffed.
Exactly. So that got corrected. And now they're going into keyword stuffing / monetization. And, you know, I mean, Google's not in the industry of like giving you information as much as it is just making money now, as with this search engine model. So, you know, that's kind of now supposedly shifting. You know, I don't know if they will or not, but like I look at it kind of almost the same way as like Yellow Cab was disrupted by Uber and Lyft. Uber and Lyft were definitely not the most on par with their ethics, but they were the disruptor that was needed to kind of jolt Yellow Cab. And, you know, unfortunately, that's going to affect a lot of people's jobs, just like it did with that industry. But I think SEO needs that shot in the arm. And I've been seeing a lot of panic in SEO forums and, you know, some people saying it's dead, some people fighting against that and all that sort of stuff. It's an evolutionary point. And, you know, I don't know if it's going to be a good evolutionary point or not, but, you know, we're seeing it change. And what happens from here, I don't know. Maybe hopefully we stop getting into the mass produced area and get back to the quality, but big TBD on all that.
Yeah, it's one of those things that the it is a top-down problem where inherently, something's going to have to come in and interrupt it in its totality to make some type of like significant shakeup for it to affect people like us who create content. It's not, sadly, I don't think us pumping out good content is going to end up changing it from a bottom-up perspective. But I do think something that kind of you were saying is like the good aspects of AI, which I think, especially if you look at our industry, I think a lot of people are big fuck AI people, which, I think that is a very commonplace opinion to have. I think if you look from a more long-term perspective and try to understand different ways that can help us, people got pissed off whenever horse and buggies stopped being a thing because it put carriage drivers out of business, or people who put horseshoes onto the horses out of business. But now you have mechanics and you have people who focus on engine blocks and like cleaning windshields and like, tempering glass and things like that. And I think it's the same thing that's going to end up happening with this AI stuff.
Absolutely. I agree too. There's a lot of points to that. I would say like one of my favorites, I'm not going to say who this person is because they're well respected and they rightfully have earned their respect, but they went on, it was a year or so ago, and they're like, I'm not using AI. I'm blah, 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 blah. I'm opposed and blah, 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 blah. And it was like, you wrote this using talk to text using your iPhone. So I'm not going to I get you, I get the intent, but you're already in it.
Exactly.
I'm not going to fight the ocean here. Whether I like that the ocean is in my backyard or not, it's here. So how are we going to use it to survive and to get ahead? And the fact of the matter is, yeah, I would love that if AI wasn't out here creating deep fakes and, convincing people on Facebook left, right, and center about every fake bit of crap out there. That's something I don't want to see. But at the same time, there have been years where I was like, man, I wish I could take this lab study and break it down. Or I wish I could take this transcript of, an hour-long meeting and make sure I cover all the points in this article. There are ethical ways to do it. And, there are people that are churning out crap, that are using AI to, just write crap. And that's a problem. That is 100% a problem. But at the other side, AI is great. It is a writing assistant. I'm currently writing a fiction book and I uploaded my favorite writing memoir into it as my editor. I'm not writing I'm writing everything originally, but at the end, I'm basically using this to train my ideal editor as opposed to paying a ton of money to get maybe someone who's going to give me positive feedback. So there's a lot of ways that it can be done. To that point, the only thing I will say that I am concerned about is the job market, the new entry-level job markets. That's what's happening is AI is going to kill a lot of those entry-level jobs.
Totally agree.
There's a lot of people that are walking. It feels almost reminiscent of 2008 when I graduated, where people are just like, well, you're screwed. Good luck with that degree. You're fucked now. Don't get a job in anything you want. And that, I think, is scary. And it is true to a lot of folks that they could have lost their jobs to AI because a lot of those, basically I see AI as a writing assistant, a marketing assistant, low level data analysis, that sort of stuff. And it is going to creep up and take further and further jobs. So there is a problem with that I'm concerned about. But at the same time, I don't think that means we're going to, the cannabis industry is largely fuck AI. I feel like you were right in saying that. And I don't know, that's archaic way of thinking. I think you're just fighting something that is already been won. And, I don't know. I love the cannabis industry, but there's a lot of times, at least the talking heads on it in the social space, I feel like they're mostly just talking heads with not a lot of substance behind it.
And I agree. It in its own weird niche sub-community way, it's like engagement farming, where
Yes. Oh,
I'm gonna say some outrageous, and there's a couple people who I won't name respectable figures or whatever who will come out and say outrageous shit to rile up 120 comments of people just fighting each other.
I hate those. Yeah,
it's aggravating, man. Yeah, exactly. I sadly I consume that content because I'm interested in what these fights are, but it's something that isn't moving anybody forward in any way. But I think the hard part is how do you bring people around on something like AI? So for a great example, honestly, is what you did recently in your article, which I fucking love, by the way. This is ways that I've been trying to use GPT is hey, I'm going to give you And sorry for those that haven't seen Andrew's article. He used GPT to essentially avail him like new artists that he would be interested in, given different tastes that he likes or different genres that he likes that for underground artists. And it gave him a list of I think 20 different artists that he could go check out. And like I love that use case. That's fantastic. I feel like that's like a out of the box way that maybe people who are the fuck AIers like can maybe open their minds up to be like, well, maybe I can use it like leisurely in a way that's interesting to me, as opposed to this is the productivity monster that takes all of our jobs.
Let me first of all appreciate that. It's yeah, I've been doing it for like a year, and this is like the second year I'm really getting more into it. I'm like focusing. I've trained the AI to like in a task that you can set to it. I've set like, here's the list. I'm looking for, certain, more so this year, I'm looking for like rare gems. Like last year, the focus was bands that I should have heard of years ago or listened to years ago. And then this year is like less than 50,000 monthly plays on like Apple Music or Spotify. It's
nice.
So yeah, and it all came out of like, I wanted to just, re-spark my creativity. I used to work in radio. I used to like discover new music. Like it was like tap water. I would just turn it on and find tons of new music. And now as I get older, especially with my writing style, I can't like listen to music while I'm writing, and it kills me because I want to find new music. So that was the drive to that. But so yeah, check out that article. It's fun. To that point though, for a more cannabis use case, I think one that would be interesting potentially for some listeners is like, I have recently noticed that with certain strains, especially when I smoke, my sinuses like freak out. Like I get really bad allergy flare-ups. I get congested nose, runny eyes, and it'll last for anywhere from like an hour to maybe 6, 7, 8 hours. And, it's a real rough time. And I noticed it recently with a strain of animals herb that I had. And I was wondering, why is this? I know there's other strains that have done it, but I hadn't started documenting it. And I was like, all right, what is this problem here? What's going on? So I basically loaded into AI because I couldn't figure it out myself. I tried myself, first of all. I always, humans should try things on their own first. But right. I then went to GPT because data analysis. And I was like, all right, go cite, it usually does it on its own, but I was like, go cite Leafly, go cite like I Love Growing Marijuana, a couple of the other top spots. And I was like, analyze animals herb for why I might be having a sinus freak out with this. Then it gave me a breakdown of it with like terp profiles, THC potency, all that sort of stuff. And then I was like, all right, well, I have a couple other strains around me that aren't causing this problem. So I was like, one of them was Face on Fire, a strain I really like. Another one, I believe, was
is that Face Off OG Cross?
What was that?
Is that a Face Off OG Cross?
Man, I should know more at this point on the growing side. Like you Beard Bros guys, like kudos to you, man. Like I try. I'm seriously trying my best. It's like I can't fucking grasp this. I'll talk dorky SEO to you all day, but I can't tell what brings what in the family tree. But yeah, dude, I love their stuff. I forget. I had like 3 or 4 other strains basically, and like none of them were causing these problems. And I basically broke it down, and they were like, well, your go-to terp seemed to be XYZ. And I got like 3 or 4 go-to terps, and it wasn't the terps. It seemed like a lot of them were all crossing over. So then it suggested it was like the only strain that was higher THC potency. It's reported as like, I think animals herb is like high 20s or something like that. Okay. So it kind of was like flagged out. I was like, maybe that's it. So still in the midst of figuring that out, but like I'm now documenting if any other strains cause this, and then I've been loading it into GPT and just seeing like how it goes. And the working early hypothesis is that maybe I'm just getting old and like THC potency is like hitting me now, and like if it hits me in my nose, like I'm just gonna start freaking out like I walked into some ragweed.
That's hilarious. I've never thought of the concept of like sneeziness coming from THC percentage. Maybe it's resin. I don't know. Do you have that? Do you dab at all? Does it happen whenever you?
Yeah, no, it doesn't happen when I dab at all. It's. I think it's the smoke. I think it's something with the smoke and maybe high THC potency.
Maybe pollen.
It could be. Yeah, it could also be one of the things that actually came up in the conversation was the like allergens, and maybe it wasn't properly cured. So it could also not be the strain issue. It might just be the curing of it, and like who my plug is sourcing from or who that dispensary is sourcing from.
Okay.
So, it's a deep dive. I want to write an article about this. So if you want to help me out with that.
I would love that. I was about to say that would be fun.
Hell yeah, let's do it.
For those of you that don't know, Andrew is located in the busiest city in the world. He's out in New York. You can say what borough you want if you'd like.
Brooklyn. Yeah.
Yeah, there we go. BK all day. So he's in the midst of like a very crazy, tumultuous, very cool market. Honestly, I spent a little bit of time in New York last year, um, and man, like I pretty much went to every shop below Central Park, and like I want to say there was like maybe around 35 stores that I went to. I went to Jersey City, I went to Brooklyn. Um, Brooklyn's like lacking on the stores, man. What
It's
is up with
starting
that?
to get more, but it's still like a trickle in. I'm going to an opening for a new one on Saturday, but it's like you would think there would be more. Yeah.
Yeah, what I like him. It's very surprising, especially just because like Brooklyn culture, I feel like would lend itself very well to a lot of these like stores. You know,
I think honestly, one of the reasons why you're probably not seeing a lot is because of that Brooklyn culture. There's so much plug loyalty out here, like including myself. Like,
I was about to say I don't blame them.
no, I mean, I'm sorry, but the prices are just hard. Like, I want to support my friend shops, and I do go to their shops and buy their stuff, but it's largely because I want to support them, not because it's the best buyer's decision by any means.
You're doing it to pay them their margin, pretty much.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. Like, I've seen my friends who bust their ass, like, even before I got into this game. Okay, fine, I'm going to go to their store, but like, the flower quality is incrementally getting closer to the legacy side, but still not there.
Yep.
The other product is good, but it's high priced. The taxation is rough. I mean, you went to New York and Jersey. I mean, might as well go to Illinois too and just like see what it's like to get really raked over the coals here financially. Like, there's good intent behind some of it. I think Illinois is still on its equity market, but like I know New York kind of gave up on that after the licensing screw ups that happened here. Jersey is always a back and forth on that. I think they're doing better than New York. I'm admittedly kind of stepped away because that sort of stuff almost made me jaded from the industry for a while.
Don't blame you.
Like after being told left, right, and center news reporting from everyone, from legislators to advocates, like we're going to get it right. We're, the big one from New York was, we learned from all the other states. We're not going to make these same mistakes. Flash forward 2 years later, they're basically Sideshow Bob on The Simpsons, stepping onto every rake, hitting themselves in the face. Like,
Oh my God.
it's just, it gets to a point where it's like, I don't have faith in you to do right by this. So like, I hope you do, because I have a lot of friends that have, literal vested stakes their whole lives in this that are trying to make well off it. New York, they 2 years of backlogs on the growers. They couldn't sell their products. The product was dying. Like they just screwed up left, right, and center. And I mean, I don't know. I want to see the market take off. I want to see, cannabis do well, but I just see a lot of disillusionment. And I think a lot of folks, anyone who's informed on the market in New York is still, for the most part, hesitant at the very least. Like there probably are a lot of folks buying at stores now, but like hesitant of where the market is going. And
I feel like it's symptomatic of like our nation at large. You know what I mean? Like New York specifically. Like if you look at it, it's kind of a micro picture of what's going on in the macro. Like
yeah,
absolutely. Am in Louisiana right now, which
oh God.
Yeah, exactly. And so I also have my legacy sources that I get everything from, because that makes the most sense for me. If I'm going to get a medical card, why on earth would I pay $120 for a half-gram live resin cart? Why? You know what I mean? Like, what am I getting from this?
They don't want the market to succeed
at all. And it's like, you have 10 operators in the entirety of the state, which I don't know. It's one of those things where you feel like everyone says that they want a good rollout. They want to, learn from the mistakes of other places. Like that's the whole point of having like second mover advantage, is to learn from the mistakes of the first movers. But we have Canada out here shipping out weed to Germany, Australia, like Africa is even moving on exportation and things like that. So like, it feels like our government is almost like in Gladiator when, Joaquin Phoenix like holds the emperor's head and like just smothers him to death. It feels like that's what they're trying to do to us,
Yeah, I mean, depending on what kind of tinfoil hat you want to wear, you could there's definitely a lot of people saying, that this is all done by design. And, again, cannabis is the micro to the macro of, some people think that is larger by design of like wanting to see the country fail in certain aspects so that things could be gutted and redone. I don't know if I fully subscribe to that. Honestly, I feel like it's just a lot of people that either don't know what they're doing, they don't have the full grasp of doing the job. And I'm not saying I do, but I think those people a lot of times don't have that capability. And then in other cases, it's people who don't care. Like legislators don't give a shit for the most part. They really only care about it if their constituents care about it. Like if it puts them or their money at risk, then they're going to start caring. But until then, it doesn't really matter. So that kind of like to the like going back a little bit to like New York, like I mean, Governor Hochul, really kind of stepped into it a bunch of times. Cuomo, very long history of not like really caring and not really wanting to see the market succeed. And now, if we go off early primary voting, we're going to see Eric Adams against Cuomo, again, not Mario Cuomo, Andrew Cuomo run for mayor, which I don't know, if you're looking at cannabis, I think that's a pretty bad situation. Also, just for New Yorkers in general, it seems like a pretty bad situation. So I don't know. I think you're right. Like, I think just America, New York, it's all kind of screwed up right now. And, I think the reason why we're obviously not exporting is because we're on a state by state basis. If we had a federal law, we could actually do something on it. I wouldn't put it past the current administration to actually do something, not because of any sort of empathetical reasons or any like human rights reasons. It would be purely for profit, but I could see them getting into the export market. I could definitely see them getting into the advantageous financial market to it. I was talking to someone a while back. I'm not going to quote him just in case it's the wrong person, but it was the CEO of a cannabis tech company. And they basically, it was kind of cold the way their interview came off, but they were 100% right. Where they're like, stop appealing by the heartstrings, because you've already won the people over with the heartstrings. Like, you're not going to win too many more Americans over on the heartstring side. I
do agree with that.
You have to, like, it's not like get people out of jail, like home grow, like helping kids, like that sort of stuff is the way it would be ideally. That's not the way it's going to work in America. You got to sell people on how they're going to make money on this. And, like, I don't know how, but like find a way to make equity the most profitable way to do it. Focus on, the inclusion stuff. Like, I don't know how it can be done, but that's the only way you're going to win these folks over. Like, I don't know, like, easier said than done, but
it all comes down to bottom line on things, because without showing use case for our bottom line, especially with a businessman as president, it's like you're not going to move the needle on this a lot. And the only way that you can like create any type of like unified market is by giving an understanding of how the government is going to profit from this, more or less. I mean, literally today, Donald Trump came out talking about how he wants to create a sovereign wealth fund for America. So it's like, you can see where the vision is headed in terms of how people are thinking of, or like how our administration is thinking of finances, and like they've rolled back DEI and everything like that. So like, we as an industry have to shift our strategy from what's been going on. Like we said earlier before the podcast even started, like, you have to, it's insanity to keep doing the things that we're doing with absolutely no reward or incentive to keep doing those. You just keep getting hit in the face, and you're just going, okay, let's try it again. Bam, And
over the years, you're seeing more and more people not here because of it, for one reason or another. Either they get tired of it or they just can't sustain anymore. Exactly. And to your point, like, I'm not saying by any means like give up your faith in like equity and inclusion and making it right for the market or just the world at large, but you got to think beyond it and make it like a secondary selling point, or unfortunately possibly even a silent selling point. Like, just keep it to yourself and bake it into the plan. It's not the most ideal by any means, but we've seen what it's like to try to pull people up, from the emotion side and from, what we see as common sense, I would say, from the advocacy side. But, I think that's like why things like home grow could eventually become, bought into, at least because, you show that people are going to save money, but then show how the country still gets its money from all the buying of like the fertilizer and the seeds and the yada, yada, yadas. That's an easier one. But, I think, like you said, we got to show how people are going to make money from it, whether we like to or not.
That's exactly it. And I don't know. I think if you're a kickboxer and your next match is against somebody who does jujitsu, then you better start training jujitsu, man, because there's going to be a point where they tackle you and get you on the ground,
Absolutely. Yeah. You gotta know your enemy.
That's exactly it.
If you don't learn, I don't know. For me, I feel like everything should be a learning lesson, whether it's good or bad. Like, take a moment and be like, what did I learn from this? And
agreed.
I feel like a lot of times in, the cannabis, I think with advocates, if you talk to them, the ones that really are in touch, they do take those learning lessons and try to pivot from it, but it may not always be reached to the public, or maybe even conveyed enough through the hierarchy of those movements and stuff that like really get it out there. But like, yeah, a lot of folks don't seem to learn from it. And a lot of times now I feel they kind of formulate their own answer as to why it didn't work, and then they leave it at that. And whether you like to or not, you should challenge your opinion to see if it's right or not. I think, I've become a big fan of hopping into, mostly chat forums of like counter opinions to what I believe in. And just to learn it. Like there are times where I'm like, especially Reddit, where I'm like, I just want to downvote you to hell right now, or like say some shit. But like, no, I want to be a silent observer and kind of, see what people are learning, like figure out the pulse of the nation, especially like for me as someone who works now even more so full-fledged in marketing, I did it with news too, with sourcing stories, but like marketing even more so, you got to know what people are talking about. And it's not always just about what you believe in or what you want to push, whether that's the right thing or the wrong thing, or, whatever the ethical stance on the stuff of the actual thing you want to get across. At the end of the day, you got to know what you're going to run into or what you potentially could run into and be prepared for it. And if you're not, you could get caught flat-footed. And I think, the cannabis movement often found itself in that position. And I think now where we're here, like, let's pivot. Let's like learn what we like. We don't have to like the circumstances we're in, but what can we do with the current circumstances?
Absolutely. Spoken like a true educated writer. Thank you. Because I do genuinely think, and I was talking about this, and this is, I'm sorry, we're going into, political realms, whatever, but I think the biggest issue that we find in America, from my perspective, is that you have an inability to listen on either side, which creates like an even greater disparity and polarity in how people choose to interact with one another. And like, I'm from the South, I'm from the deep South. So like I've existed in, more conservative areas. And granted, Baton Rouge is like a more blue area within a giant red area, but you're still around a lot of people who have conservative feelings, opinions, etc. And I went the complete opposite and went to the Northeast and went to college at arguably like one of the most liberal places on earth. And the biggest thing that you find with people is like you create these boogeymen of humans in your head and it villainizes them. And then you just don't want to listen to anything that they have to say. And like the individuals like yourself who go ahead and sit there and say, well, let me just see where you're coming from. Let me listen. Even if I don't agree with it, and even if like I inherently have a almost violent reaction to like what you have to say, like let me understand where the genesis of it comes from so that I can better understand my neighbor. I think that's the way that you start to like, oh, I hate to say it like this, but like bring back America to Americanness versus having us be like this weird, like split place where there's a bunch of finger pointing.
Yeah, it's we're a pretty high point of tribalism, I would say, in the world.
Agreed.
And, I think that's by design. I read a really good book probably a decade ago at this point called The Sociopath Next Door. And it kind of like laid out how like sociopaths often use like tribalism and stuff like that to make it like very binary. And, it's not a binary world we live in. I think there are a lot of folks who have shared opinions and there's just, splits on it. And with cannabis, it's interesting because the general public seems to be agreed on it, but it's the politicians and the top folks who seem to not want to do it, the law enforcement and stuff. And, I don't know, those are often the ones that kind of benefit from, binary splits where, it's this side or this side. Whereas, there's not so much of that. And I think, I feel the world, I don't know, the optimist in me is hopefully seeing that, like, I feel like the working class and stuff are starting to recognize that a little bit, but it might go the complete opposite. So I'm not really sure, but I think that by design, we try to often see it as like, you don't like this or you don't like that. And, with cannabis, thankfully, I feel like that has been one place where I've seen actually coming together. Like it is weird because like it could be left, ultra right, or, a lot of centrism. And, there are folks like, there are the anti-vax community and the pro-vax community. I saw a lot of it during COVID and it was very ugly, like a lot of very ugly conversations, but broadly speaking, you could see in cannabis, there is like that overlap.
Unity.
And I think that goes to show the power of the plant more than anything too, is like, it is everyone, everyone consumes this thing. Like everyone sees benefit in it. And like the only people who don't seem to be the people that like, I don't know, control all the power or like maybe are making money off of seeing it go the other way with private prisons,
exactly it.
Pharmaceuticals and other bullcrap. So like, I don't know. I would love to see, like I said, we don't want to go too political here, but I do think like a people's revolution of some kind, not like violent by any means, but like, morally, politically, philosophically. I think that really needs to happen, and I would love to see it because I think we're at the height of like the need for it.
I agree. I totally agree. It's an inflection point. You know what I mean? Like we're at somewhere where like great change can occur. We just don't exactly know which way that can go yet, you know?
Exactly. Yeah. It's we're at a very interesting tipping point for everything, you know, with cannabis in general. But like a lot of broader things, like we're saying, you know, cannabis is very important to a lot of things, but like in the grand scheme, there's other things that are going on too that need to be like considered, but like a lot of uncertainties out there in like the micro and macro at this point.
Totally agree. So to kind of switch gears on things,
yeah,
I see you and kind of something that you had posted about, which honestly led me to asking you if you wanted to come onto the podcast, was you just being like, I need some different shit, man, because everything feels the same and I don't understand like why nobody can differentiate on a platform. And I think, again, like, I'm going to reiterate the same thing that I said in the comments is like, I think the thing that I love about you is that you very much lean into the fact that you're a multidimensional individual. Whereas I think a lot of people will almost like bolster the image of like just one facet of them because that's their branding or that's the way that they like want to exist to the marketplace. And I think the fact that you like wrestling, like horror, like music, love cannabis, like, and you like to write like novels, copy, brand strategy, all these different things, I feel like are what make you the multi-hyphenate that you are and like give you depth as an individual as opposed to just like a player in a market who's selling services. You know what I mean? So like, I guess the thing that I want to ask you is like, do you feel like, so like right now you're working on things in the horror realm. Do you feel like that inherently juices you up in the other aspects of your career because you have this like different outlet to express yourself in a way that's not just one lane, like doubled down, tripled down, quadrupled down over and over again, you know?
Yeah, no. Well, first, I appreciate that compliment.
Yeah, of course.
Sometimes I wonder if that generalist or broad approach is, you know, not the right way, because I do think, you know, doubling down and, you know, going in can be beneficial. But I think to those sort of folks who do, I always found myself struggling because I wasn't authentically me. I think, you know, if I trapped, if I grew, you know, if I was in trimming and sold and, you know, had my hand in it, like more, like I smoked weed since I was 18, but I had it from a plug from my friend who would roll us blunts. Like that was like, I'm not that guy. Like I never was like ultra heady. I was never like too into it. And like, if you have that and you can double down and be that one solo track, especially like there's a few folks, I won't name them, but like there's a few folks that are that way plus advocacy and like really heavily doing it right. Like you can make it being one track, but I think it's the inauthenticity of it. I think nowadays more so than ever, people want that authentic, and with so much inauthentic being surrounded by it, like the authentic ones do get sourced out pretty like well often. So for me, at some point over the last few years, I was kind of just needing a change. I felt a little listless. I felt like almost amorphic in the cannabis space. I didn't like really know what I was doing. I was trying different things to see what would work plus what I liked. And it kind of came back to just what, you know, you get taught a lot of times is just know what you love, like go back to yourself and just, you know, do it. And like, I don't know. I like dorky shit. Most of the time in my life that I like stuff, people would tell me, don't talk about that. That's stupid. We don't like it. And, you know, I don't know. In the last few years, I guess that stuff kind of got accepted back into the zeitgeist. And I was like, all right, cool. Like, here's my time to like, double down and talk about this. Or like, I don't know. I've just enjoyed it. And I was, you know, I liken life's journey in work and like everything else is to like, just hiking and climbing a mountain. And there's the ultimate summit, the place that I want to get to. And I'll set goals to it. And when I get there, if I like the view, I'll stick around. And if I don't, you know, or if I feel that it's time to move on, it's time to pick up and move on. And, you know, you can always go back to those sort of things. And I feel like, you know, I'm stretching that analogy a little bit, but like I go back to cannabis, then I go to horror, and then I go to writing novels and doing journalism and, you know, even SEO. It's, you know, it's not the most fun by any means in terms of like building up my own website and stuff, but it is, it's almost a puzzle. I like cracking those codes and finding out what works and seeing the success and, you know, the incremental movement that way. And whereas with my book, I'm, you know, right now I'm writing a fiction novel for the first time. I've written 2 nonfiction books about weed. Now I want to write a really brutal kind of, horror movie novel, like with like 30 some different character perspectives. And, that's the new challenge I'm doing. And I think to get to what you're saying, like with that invigoration, it does. And I think one of the big things that I've also noticed is it helps kind of realize what my priorities are. I will, be focused on my website and my book and my fitness or, cooking or something else that I have going on. And then I've noticed like one thing I was using Duolingo for the longest time. And over time, I saw a diminishing return on value on it. And my focus was getting pulled away. And I was like, all right, I'm phoning in 5-10 minutes a day to keep basically a superfluous streak at this point. Or I could, cast it aside, make it like a tough decision and like decide what else I want to focus in on. And that's when I started working on the book. And I know probably within the next couple months, I'll be done editing the book. Then that's going to have to spend that time marketing it and getting it out there and getting that going. But then there will be a time where that thing changes and, I'll be writing new stories or something, but I think then I see all the priorities of where I'm like wanting to put my efforts into and my time. And right now it's definitely the fiction while working on the website and then trying to grow clients and, kind of almost re-enjoy cannabis from a different perspective in a lot of ways.
And that's the thing to me, I think, honestly, that I really respect about it is you are delving into things in a way that doesn't almost like, I don't know, and you tell me if I'm wrong on this, but like doesn't allow you to hit burnout because you're following like Joseph Campbell would always say, follow your bliss, and like I think the like feeding your heart in a bunch of different ways that also benefits your career like ultimately keeps this flywheel of things going on to make you like excited about the work that you do, as opposed to like like let's say that you did the same SEO stuff every day in perpetuity, for like, let's say like 5 years. You're probably at some point going to be like, holy shit, I need to get out of this. But like having the ability to kind of take different pathways up the mountain, so to say, is like a very enriching process, I think. Like, for example, from my perspective, that generalism that you talk about is like my blueprint within cannabis. Like I started off doing advocacy and student group work, and then I cultivated, and then I did harvesting and trimming services, and then I worked in packaging, market research, et cetera, et cetera. And like all of those things led me to writing because like the generalist background is like a very useful when it comes from a writing perspective,
Sure.
And that's like where the fun for me comes from learning different things or like making this like sticky web of knowledge bigger, So yeah, I love that.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Yeah, I'm glad you're doing it too. It's you definitely have a very deep resume. I was checking out your LinkedIn again. I was like, damn, I forgot Nigel did all this. It's the way, like, I don't know. I think that, like I said, you always can go the opposite route. There is no one track way to success or happiness or whatever you want to define as your like success in career or life or whatever. But like, you got to like stick to what you want to do in one way or another. Like if you want to be gung-ho in on this plant 100% and be that way, do it. But like live it and like be ready to work it and do it all the time. For me, I just realized I was like, I'm getting older. I don't want to like go out to events all night. I don't like large crowds and all this sort of stuff. So like, I got to like do it my way and see what works my way. And, at the same time, keep trying new stuff, go to new things, and, don't stop going to those events, even if you're not fully on board with it. Like go learn new facets of this game, even if you're not interested, I think even beyond cannabis too, like right now I'm doing that too. Like to the point where it's like my book, one thing I'm going to need in the future for that, I need to know e-coms. So I'm like doubling down in like learning like HubSpot ads and landing pages and, doing all that, that will benefit my clients as well, potentially. And, that sort of stuff. So you like got to look at like how you're enriching yourself at the same time, enriching your career prospects. And then in turn, like how you can help other people with it. So I don't know. I don't know if I fully answered your question there, but I feel like that, like,
no, that was 100% what I was looking for. I think, from like a heart and a skill perspective, like having those different things, like somehow finds a way to benefit everything else and like almost like make the pie that you have bigger, if that makes any sense. And then from the other thing that I wanted to ask you, because I know we're running on time, is you've come out with 2 books, like you said, in cannabis, like you've come out and written 2 books. and you're working on a third. And I remember reading something that you wrote where you essentially were like, I have a lot of learning lessons that I got from those two books that I'm excited to be able to apply in the future. Where like, I don't know, the greenness, I guess, in the book space when you first initially released your books, like what are the big takeaways that you had that you're like looking forward to putting in place with this one when it comes to like working with publishers or editors or anything else? I love the using GPT to like make your perfect editor thing. That's like a great
Thanks,
start.
man. Yeah, I hope, shout out Ben Gilbert from the New York Growers Cup. He told me to read Stephen King's On Writing, and I hope Stephen King is okay with me using the second half of his book to be my editor, because that's been a great one. Hopefully he doesn't hate that. But no, what was that too? The weed finally got me. No, I think like the biggest lessons that I got from writing this book, or the two books, I should say, is really like you got to know who you're working with. And the folks I worked with were great. It's my fault. I didn't like read up on what was going on and like what was going to be needed to make this book a success. And I went too naive. So I think even taking a step back further, be like, just learn what you need to like know. And before you go in with people, like do your research, know what you're going to be talking about, know what you need to like cover any gray areas, and kind of get like everything confirmed. Like really don't have any uncertainties before going into working with people. Mm-hmm. At the same time, my book deals came from a very unconventional way. A lot of folks, will pitch and then go through that, and they'll get like a nice advance from that. And, that will be the process. That wasn't my case. I was recruited by this publisher to write these cannabis books. So even when the first one happened, I thought it was a bit of a scam. And then finally they proved that they weren't. But like, I was like, oh, you're looking for free writing and like all this sort of stuff. And, it turned out to be legitimate afterwards. But, it was definitely some sussing out. So you got to know who you're working with. You got to really vet them and make sure they're going to bring to the table what you need. The big thing I found out afterwards, and again, not their fault, they didn't like build up anything expectation for this, but marketing was not there. There was no marketing of it, and it was basically all on me. And I could do a little bit of marketing on that, especially at that time, a couple of years ago when I was focused on journalism. I was not great at marketing, so I didn't know what the hell I was doing. And we sold a couple thousand books, like 2,500 between the two books. So not terrible, but
not at all.
Yeah, it was a lot of like thankful, like Nissan Co PR came on as like pro bono. I had a lot of like friends in the cannabis space. Like I'm forgetting all the who's now, so I apologize, but like spreading like really good words and, pushing it through their networks. And I'm pretty sure my family bought like 150 copies as well. So, there's definitely stuff like that, but I would definitely the marketing. And I think that's kind of where I'm at now. I'm at a point with my business where I've been able to I basically save an extra 6% off every paycheck I get from freelance. So I take out my tax holdings plus an extra 6%. And basically throughout the year, it accumulates so that if I get blindsided with any tax payments, I have money to cover it and it's not going to hit my bottom line. And then if I file my taxes and everything is good, I release it all back to myself for the next year, almost like a bonus. So usually what I do is I take all that money and put it into the market, and I'm still going to put like my max contributions in, but then any surplus from that, I want to put into investing in marketing. So I knock wood, no like financial setbacks happen along the way this year. And like, I can do that because I would love to invest in proper PR and like, not just, I have a lot of PR friends, but I want to focus on someone who has success in horror and PR and, then maybe get a good designer to do the label. Cause it is going to go self-publishing route, I think.
Let's go.
If it sinks, it sinks. And I lost a little bit of money, but, it'll make a great case study for the business. And
absolutely,
if we hit the moonshot, maybe in a few years, I'll be back in here talking about how I was high one night and came to the idea of this new Amazon show that got a couple Emmys.
Yes, that's what I'm hoping, man. It's kind of how we started off the call was like, risk seeking is inherent in our nature by even working in the industry that we've chosen to work in over the last couple of years. Like the asymmetrical bets like can pay off, and that's what I'm hoping. Like I definitely hope it's picked up, and I get to say actually another guy whose book this was adapted after.
Yeah, absolutely, man. I want to see success for you. I want to see success for everyone in this space. And, when it comes to risk taking, I think, if the OGs can trap and, risk their lives and go to jail for this sort of stuff and have people be killed and stuff for it, like I can, take a gamble on a couple $100 and like try to make a book out of it or something like that.
Right.
Like there's people who put actual risk into this and, yeah, I could lose money and stuff, but at the end of the day, I'm not risking my freedom on this sort of stuff. I'm not struggling. Like the worst case scenario is I get taken out the game from like the professional standpoint and who I'll pick up, find another industry and make enough money that I can smoke weed and go to cannabis events and hang out with my friends anyway. So like,
beautiful.
Take the risk while it's here,
Damn right.
Not everyone can.
Not everyone can, but if you can, it's totally worth the jump.
Absolutely.
So tell everybody where they can find you, Andrew.
Yeah. So the best way to find me now is visiting the award website, awardcc.com. You can email me there. You can follow me on social, although I'll probably end up changing these handles one of these days. But it's the Canna Writer on Instagram, basically non-active on Twitter and Blue Sky and those other ones. But I think I'm the Canna Writer on all of those. And if you want to find me on LinkedIn, it's by Andrew Ward. So, hit me up, follow me there, shoot me an email at andrew@awardcc.com if you ever want to talk SEO, content marketing, or any other sort of fun stuff.
Absolutely. Yeah. Nothing but the highest of praises and recommendations for everything that Andrew does. You can find me at Nigel Despinasse on LinkedIn and Nigel_Ds on all my socials. And yeah, this has been episode 7 of Cannabis Pros and Marketing Masters. Signing off. Appreciate you guys.